Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast, a competitor's guide to mental health and mastery. My name is Paul Clean. I've known sports and training my entire life, but it wasn't until I worked on my mind that I finally started achieving what I believed I was capable of. When I combined mindful and spiritual practices to my already competitive demeanor, I gained a new level of clarity in life and traded my career at Amazon to start Down Dog Athletics. In this podcast, I interview top athletes and coaches to uncover the mindsets of top performers. You'll hear from doctors, authors, and experts in the health space as they break down how to take your mental health, physical health, and performance to the next level. And last but not least, you'll hear from me and my experiences and how I'm cultivating growth for myself and my clients, both mentally and physically. Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast, Competitor's Guide to Mental Health and Mastery. My name is Paul Clean. I am your host, and today we got part 2 of your Transformation Blueprint mini-series, and I'm super excited because this is actually a client that I've worked with for well over a year, and I won't steal any of his thunder. I won't steal kind of where he was at, everything that he's seen, but this is a really cool podcast to do because it shows the full life cycle of someone who's a little bit older than Carson was on last week's episode. And it's interesting because we both worked at Amazon. We both lived in the same building. And since then, we've had a different relationship where it's gone from in-person to online, doing some mobility, doing some yoga, doing some weight loss, doing some strength phases, and everything in between. And, the cool thing is just how coachable this guy was. And that's one thing I want to say that is one of the key traits. If you listen to one of my podcasts earlier in the year, 5 athletic mindsets to be successful, be coachable is number 5. And this guy's been super coachable. If you find a good coach and you take what they say and run with it, and obviously don't go crazy into too far of an extreme of what they're saying, but just listen, absorb, be like a sponge and soak it up, and you're going to see results. And so that's what Brian's going to talk about on the podcast. We've got a few other things that we'll cover, but super excited. Brian Schmidt. Brian, what's up, man? Thanks for coming on my podcast. I saw you this morning, but seeing you again this evening, we're sandwiching the day with some mindful muscle. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So little background on Brian. We actually used to live in the same apartment complex. I have since moved, and I got introduced to Brian through, what do they call the front desk person, the leasing agent?
But yeah, the general manager.
Yeah, general manager. I got an email, and they're like, "Hey, some guy is looking for a personal trainer. Can I give him your contact information?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I was fresh in the game, and so I ended up talking with Brian. I think your wife submitted the application form, but then I ended up talking to you. But this is going to be the episode 2 of the little mini series in January 2021, where I interview people that have seen the same transformations that you listening in January might be looking for. And some of the feedback that I've gotten that I thought was really cool is like, you've told your story. I'd love to hear how other people create their own stories and what their journeys are like, and see if they can find a little bit of consanguinity in what you've experienced, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. And so we'll kind of phrase this as like the initial consultation call, and just like, where were you a year and a half ago before we started with your fitness, with your health, with your mindset, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So before I met you in September of 2019, I was coming off a couple of injuries. I had a bunch of running injuries, a midlife crisis, did couch to 5K, eventually built up to half marathons and did quite a number of them, but had a lot of injuries related to running. And then some more injuries, had a bike accident and fell on my shoulder, twisted my ankle, just a number of different injuries that had culminated in basically all of my fitness activities coming to an end. So for a number of years I was running. Then when running, I couldn't run anymore. I began cycling, and then I fell on the bike and I stopped cycling, and I really was sedentary. Originally, when I reached out to you, I wanted to find an alternative to the running that I had. I wanted to get myself. I gained a few pounds, 20 pounds or something from where I previously was. My mobility was really restricted from the injuries that I had had, and I was missing what running gave for me in my life. And I didn't think that running was going to be something in the cards anymore. I'm 46 years old, with all of the various injuries. Every time I was healthy or thought that I was healthy enough, I would try to start running again. I would never be able to get in one run without needing more than a week recovery just from the one run. So I thought the running was going to be out of the game, and that I would be looking for some other activities. In particular, I was looking to start to hike and maybe get back into cycling was my intent when I first reached out to you. At the time, I was north of 230 pounds, which is about the biggest that I've been. As an adult, I was usually closer to around 220, between 210, 220, 225 for most of my adult life. So I had a few pounds on what my norm was. Yeah, that's where I was at.
So you talked about wanting to get back into hiking. So it's almost like your initial goal was more just like performance. Like you just wanted to perform better. Would you say it was aesthetic in that you wanted to lose a bunch of weight, or you're like, hey, I just want to do something different so that I can go and enjoy other activities?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about weight really at all. Actually, it was all about being able to be active and to find some activities that would fill the space in the void that running left behind.
Right.
It was more about and being in the Pacific Northwest. There's all the beautiful mountains and trails, and so the idea that was in my head was hiking would be a great activity to be able to get into. And at the time, like the injuries were bad enough that like just walking, let's say down all the way down the hill to the waterfront and back, that could actually be really troublesome, just with my ankle and my hips and my knees. So general functionality just wasn't there. I couldn't really do what I thought of as fairly simple activities with any confidence or without discomfort. That's the starting point that I was at.
Yeah. And you work at Amazon, so you're pretty sedentary just in your normal job, right? We're all working from home, so it's not like you're even walking the 20 minutes that you would normally walk to work. So question.
Even then, I was taking cabs as opposed to, even though it was just a short 15-minute walk to work, I would still be hopping in a cab to get back and forth to work on so many days. And I was much more sedentary than I really needed to be.
Yeah, that's a very Amazon thing to do, right? Invent yourself out of a box. Like, I don't want to walk, so I'll hire someone or I'll outsource it to get me the 15 minutes or however many half miles. That's really funny. So we start, and I want to hear from your perspective what the first week, first couple weeks, first month was like for you, and like how you remember it. Because I think looking back now, it might seem as like, oh, that was like a necessary stepping stone. But initially, what were your thoughts? Were you like, this is terrible, this is great?
Certainly, I didn't think this was terrible, but what I remember is that you sort of immediately introduced me to your, what I think of as your philosophy in wellness, and that's multifaceted. It's not just about strength, but inclusive of mobility, particularly yoga, down dog, and mind, nutrition, and sleep. And those are what I remember as sort of the pillars of wellness, and where your point of coaching was going to come from. And a lot of those things, most of those things, in fact, are not things that I focused on before. Not that I didn't know about them, but I did very little stretching or yoga, meditation was something that I had never really done before. I was never really paid attention to my sleep hygiene. And I never really thought about nutrition. So the only thing that I had done was, some light strength training for a short period of time, and the cycling and running. So you introduced me to all of those concepts, and you helped create a framework for going after those things. But I also distinctly remember, or at least my perspective, was that we were going to focus our energy on not all of them. That I'd be introduced to these concepts, and you slowly added more and more complexity onto some of those concepts. But the initial focus that I ended up having with our conversation was nutrition, and sort of the secondary was getting the habit of going and doing strength with you. So some mobility and some strength work with you, and getting a pattern of doing that twice a week. But that sort of was just show up and do what you asked me to do. The real thing that was beyond building that habit of seeing you was paying attention to nutrition. And that started pretty straightforward, pretty easy. You were like, there's a food diary. MyFitnessPal is the one that I use. If you use a food diary, then you'll be able to measure and know what it is that you're eating, what you're doing, and you can then set goals and make adjustments to it. And you set me up immediately. You did some estimates of what my calorie needs were, and had a little model for, and more so taught me about how calories in works, and your resting metabolism, and your normal rate of expenditure, and all of the elements that go into sort of how many calories you burn. You taught me roughly 3,500 calories is a pound. So if I wanted to lose a pound, I would need to be in a deficit from my norm by 3,500 calories, and that would get me a pound. And we set some initial goals. The goal being to lose a pound a week, to measure all of the things that I was eating in the food diary, and that we would use the learnings from the diary to help make adjustments to be able to hit the particular goals of getting a 500 calorie daily deficit. And then at the early points, you also introduced me to the notions of macros, which I'd never really thought about before: proteins, carbs, and fats, and how making adjustments to the macros in the right way helps support what my nutrition goals would be of losing weight, particularly increasing my protein goals. And so pretty much that felt like my focus. Nutrition felt like my focus for at least the first 3 or 4 months that we were working together. Of course, I was also going into the gym with you. I was learning about movements. I was working on my mobility. We were doing, things that probably are more rehab-like with some of my injuries. But that was thoughtless for me. That was just me showing up and doing whatever you told me to do. The thoughtful thing was nutrition. And within the first week, I started seeing results on the scale. So part of what you had me do was the diary and weighing myself a few times a week. I did the bad thing or the obsessive thing of weighing myself much more than just a few times a week. But I started seeing an impact just by tracking. I was immediately more thoughtful about what I was putting into my mouth, and I was able to hit our initial calorie goals. I'm pretty sure just within that first week. And then after a few weeks of tracking, I was able to make adjustments to start working on changing my macros, in particular boosting up my protein intake, which did an amazing job at helping me feel very satiated and not being hungry with the the deficit of calories that we had going on. But in any case, that very first week, I lost a few pounds on the scale. That first month, I think I ended up losing almost 10 pounds in that first month alone. I've since sort of learned that probably I didn't lose 8 pounds of fat in that month. I probably a lot of the salt and other things that I was eating, being more bloated, carrying around more water, things like that were probably a lot of what those initial losses were. But at the time, didn't make a difference. I just was able to see, at least looking at a week view, I was able to see progress on the scale, and that ended up being very addictive, arguably too addictive, seeing that progress on the scale.
Yeah, you do a really good job of, like, information comes out, latching onto it, and just like sticking to it. It's I'll applaud you and pat you on the back. You have a really impressive streak on Duolingo, where you like latched onto this language app. I think it's been 5 years for every single day you've practiced a language. It used to be like 4 languages, 5 languages.
4 years. But
4
yeah,
years.
for 4
right.
years, I haven't missed a single day of studying language.
Right. So when I introduced the concept of like data and tracking, and like, was that something that seemed like a big task, or was it something that you were like, oh yeah, that makes sense? Like the Amazon side of you is like data, decisions, like action. Like, how did that kind of land when I introduced the concept of like, let's get a holistic picture of how everything's looking?
It did tap into a lot of some intrinsic things, like you say, that are related to my work, sort of being data driven in my job. So you did tap into some of that and some of those instincts that I have. But there was also some repulsion, to be honest. Or repulsion is maybe the wrong word, but some apprehension. Like you had given me a spreadsheet where we were going to track everything. We were going to track my calories and macros and weight, and then a bunch of other fields as well, including things like how I felt, sort of like diarying. So what was my stress level that day? How many hours did I sleep? And a few other elements that I was to keep track of. And that overall wasn't, like, the bookkeeping portion of that, the diary portion of that wasn't something that I was attracted to. But the tools that made it easy, I loved having the data. So like MyFitnessPal, especially once I figured out how to scan the barcodes and create meals and just very quickly enter into MyFitnessPal and sort of get my rhythm there, that became something easy to do, where it wasn't onerous. I didn't have to think about it. And I was able to get all this great data out of it. And so that latched on quite easily. But the other elements, like, for example, monitoring my sleep and stress and those kinds of things, that never connected nearly as much, mostly because there was work that I had to do to enter it. So that's where I was in the beginning. I've since added some more tools to my kit that actually help me get the data that I do use and obsess over without me doing a lot of work. And so as a concrete example to that, it was actually in the beginning. I don't remember exactly when. I think sometime in October. So shortly after I started seeing you, you had maybe realized I liked the data and I was lazy or didn't want to put it in, and you recommended Whoop to me. I think you gave me a few options at the time for things, and I got a Whoop, I think, in October of 2019. And Whoop is just it's a little wristband that you wear, and it's measuring your heart rate and heart rate variability, sort of every second or some very, very often measurement of your heart rate. And it does a number of calculations, including your sleep. It tells you how many hours of sleep you actually got where you were sleeping. It tells you what phases of your sleep that you had, um, as well as a strain score and a recovery score. Those are the three main things that Whoop provides. A strain score being just while you're active, how active were you, how much stress were you putting on your heart, and then recovery is basically analysis of your sleep to say how well you've recovered to be able to take on more strain the next day. In any case, once I got the Whoop, a lot of these other elements that you were asking me to diary, I ended up getting, again, relatively for free. And the data was much loved, and not having to do a lot of work in order to get that. Just recharging the battery on my Whoop was more or less all I needed to do. That ended up being a great thing for me.
Yeah.
I still don't do the diarying of other elements that don't get caught with those tooling. I'm not very good at doing.
Yeah, I would say though your consistency has definitely helped, and to a degree, it's like I forget what's the saying where it's like the end justifies the means, right? And after that first year, right, I think what was it, 58 pounds in 52 weeks is where we landed, right? So almost right, a pound a week. We did a little bit more, right? You can't control that, but I think what was really cool to see, and I want you to talk about this a little bit, was just like your initial mindset going into like what you thought was possible, and then where we ended up, and kind of how that's made you be like, oh, is the earth actually round, or is it like what's going on? I thought it was flat the whole time.
So in those early conversations that we had about what my goals were, what I wanted, we talked about weight and aesthetics, how I looked, my weight. Again, it wasn't top of mind. More so was being functional and being able to do activities well. Although I did think that I needed to lose a few pounds at least. I remember very distinctly telling you that that maybe I could lose 30 pounds, but I don't think I could lose more than that and be healthy. And the rationale that I had behind that was, as a teenager, I was a rather trim, athletic teenager. I've sort of been the size I am as an adult since I was about 14 or 15 years old in terms of height and frame. And my teenage weight was between 170 and maybe 190, 195 as an athletic build, trim teenager. Like at 175, you definitely were seeing all of my ribs kind of thing. Like I was skinny at 175. At when I was a little bit older, 18, 19, when I was more around 190, by no means would anyone call me heavy. But you couldn't see my ribs nearly as much as you could in my skinny 175. And then as I grew into my adult body, I never saw a weight below 200 pounds. Like I can't even remember the last time I was below 210. And as a young adult, I was a big guy, like a big frame and all of that, but I never thought of myself as being particularly overweight or heavy when I was, at the 210 sort of range. And so I thought that going below 200, I would be emaciated as an adult. That's what my belief was, and that I would be unhealthy. So when we first talked about nutrition and weight, I thought, maybe 30 pounds max I could lose, and still feel like I was a healthy person. Turns out that was way wrong because, as you said, I lost nearly double that, 58 pounds. And even then, once I 58 pounds, I didn't feel like I was at the bottom. I certainly looked a lot different, and I probably didn't need to lose any more weight from an aesthetic perspective for just feeling and looking healthy. But I also know that I could have dropped another 2-3% of my body fat and still felt awesome, looked great, and not have gone too low. So I was way off the mark. I probably could have lost 70 pounds where I thought 30 was all that I could lose.
Totally. And in the last 3 months, we just finished a phase where we went the other direction. We put on, I think, what you put on 9 pounds, 9 pounds, 11 pounds.
I put on 9 pounds. So 3-month bulk, the first time I ever intentionally tried gaining weight in my life.
Right. Isn't that fun? It's like eat more food. That's what I'm doing right now. It's like hard to eat food. You don't realize it.
So yeah, in that 3-month bulk, I put on about 9 pounds, and 6 pounds of that was muscle. So I did at the end of my cut, when I lost the 58 pounds, I did a DEXA scan, which is kind of like an X-ray MRI kind of machine that measures your body composition highly accurately. So how much bone, how much muscle, how much fat, where it is in your body during this whole full body scan. And so I had the results of that immediately after the weight loss. And then after the 3-month bulk, I did another scan. And so I know pretty accurately just how much I gained and where I gained it. I can actually see in the charts like how much muscle and fat I gained in my biceps and my quads. Like it's pretty detailed analysis. And so I gained 6 pounds of muscle and another few pounds of fat to earn me that muscle.
Yeah, and gives the listeners some tips on some of your favorite foods to help you hit, especially like the protein numbers, because anyone who works in like the health space or the nutrition space or even the training space, like a lot of the health space is like underconsumed protein. People don't drink enough water. People don't walk enough. So what were some of the things that you did to make sure you got enough protein? Because obviously you did a really good job of doing that in order to cut that much off initially and then put that much back on.
So let me just rewind and tell a quick anecdote around that. Like I remember being so excited. I came to you. It was probably around December or January of 2019, or December 2019. And I was so excited because I got my weekly protein macro up to 100 grams or something like that. And I was like, Paul, check this out. I got my protein all the way up to 100 grams. I average 100 grams a day. And your face was just like, no, that's not good. You need to go much higher. You need to be at 180 grams or something like that. You may have softened it and made it 50 grams or something like that. But I was super excited that I was able to get up to 100 grams, and suddenly I realized I'm not nearly far enough along in my protein intake. So the things that I've done to increase my protein and to make it easy, there's a few things that I've done to make just nutrition easy. One of them, counterintuitively, is I started eating more prepared foods, and that was in opposition to eating at restaurants. So I used to, just like I would cab everywhere, I would go to a restaurant for just about every meal, cook almost nothing. And to sort of shift that habit, I still needed wanted my grab and go kind of lifestyle. I wasn't going to go grocery shopping and do a bunch of food prep, and like that just wasn't my thing. So the Go store, working at Amazon, having the Go store just underneath me, made that super convenient for me, where there was lots of prepackaged foods, prepared foods like sushi or salads, wraps. There's all kinds of prepared food. And with MyFitnessPal, you just zap the barcode and it pulls all the data into the system. And GoStore is small enough that I was able to pretty quickly assess all the things that they had inside, so I can know what had the right protein for calorie sort of ratio. Like what's the really high protein, lean, high protein dishes there. It only took a few times at the store before I really knew it well, and I knew the things that I liked there. And so that became a big part of my arsenal in terms of eating. And I would go to the Go store often as opposed to going to a food truck or to a restaurant for like, particularly for like a mindless meal, like a work lunch kind of thing, where I wasn't enjoying the meal. It was literally just fueling myself. Often just eating in front of my computer while I'm working. I'm not really thinking about eating. And so it, in any case, going to the Go store, replacing out the restaurant meals with the high protein choices from there, made things very easy for me. And from there, like I still go to the Go store a lot, just because I built that as a habit. I guess they must love me. Some of the things that I really go back to over and over again. It's just so easy to grab a meal. Like I'll use today as an example. I went to the Go store for both lunch and dinner today. For lunch, I grabbed a chicken Caesar salad and two other chicken toppers, salad toppers that were roasted chicken breast, about 3 ounces for the salad toppers each. And then that was for lunch. And then for dinner, a bunch of sushi and sashimi. And my lunch, 2 chicken breasts with the Caesar salad, like probably 600 calories or something like that. I would have to go look to see exactly what it was, but it's something like 600 calories, but then like 75 grams of protein. And the real, there's a few things that I think are pretty important for me from all of that. One is that convenience, the ease of being able to track everything, the ease of quickly getting the meal. Like I don't have to think very hard. I know what the good choices are. And making a distinction between meals that are fuel for my body that are thoughtless, that I'm not enjoying, versus meals that I love. And I love eating. I love food. I travel all around the world, and when I go travel, I'm not there to look at the things. I'm there to eat. Like eating is a big part of my identity. But most of my meals are thoughtless. So you talked a little bit about my habits before, and like my language studying habits. I cultivated a habit of making my thoughtless meals just be really good meals to meet my nutrition goals. And then if I wanted, for example, to have a nice dinner, it becomes super easy because my breakfast and lunch and the thoughtless meals, I packed in my protein, I got my calorie nice and low. I can go out to the Italian restaurant and order whatever I wanted off of the menu. And maybe I would go a little bit over my target for the day. Sometimes even not a little, I'd go over by a lot. But I could just easily make that up in the next day or throughout the course of the next week, just shaving off a few calories here and there, and my averages still work out. And so that insight that most of my meals that I was eating, I wasn't actually enjoying. I wasn't thinking about them to even enjoy them, and that I could optimize them for my goals is sort of the big takeaway. To get back to the question that you asked in terms of the protein, like I gave a bunch of examples of things that I go back to. For breakfast, I became addicted to cottage cheese. I think a cup of cottage cheese, maybe 25 grams of protein, something like that. So I was eating a banana and a cup of cottage cheese just about every day for a year, or at least on my thoughtless breakfast. Sometimes you have a nice breakfast, but on a thoughtless breakfast, I just did that. And then when I needed to get my protein all the way up to 180, I supplemented that with 2 scoops of whey protein as well. And so cottage cheese, whey protein, these chicken breasts when I cook at home. Now I do some home cooking and meal prep, but a ton of chicken breast, a ton of salmon and tuna, sushi as a prepared food or a restaurant meal. Beef jerky is another big one that sort of became my snack or or sometimes not even snack, just like hey, I need another 25 grams of protein. Okay, let me grab a bag of jerky. It's 200 calories, 25 grams.
Quick thing on beef jerky, that's like my go-to at gas stations and when traveling, because it's always carried, it's always packaged, and it's the like most efficient thing you can get at a grocery store.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the cheapest thing. Sometimes those fancy bags cost you $10 or whatever. But like a small bag of jerky, a 2.5 ounce bag or whatever they are, 200 calories, like maybe close to 30 grams of protein in it. And just so easy. And it makes it so easy in the gas station when I am gassing up to do exactly what you just said and grab a thing of jerky as opposed to a Snickers bar or whatever I would normally grab from the gas station shelf.
Yeah, so. Totally. What curious, what would you tell maybe your younger self or someone who is 2 years removed from where you are now? So let me rephrase that. So advice to yourself 2 years ago, or someone who this January is trying to embark upon the journey that you just completed and the journey that you're still on. What piece of advice? One to three things.
Have patience. I did get results pretty quickly that I was able to feed on. The story that I didn't tell is during those weeks where I'm obsessively stepping on the scale in an unhealthy way that I shouldn't have been doing, I'm seeing the weight go up, or I go on vacation. I went on vacation for a week and was eating out at restaurants a lot, and I come back and I was 10 pounds up, and like, it's okay. The scale's going to move. The scale's going to go up. The scale's going to go down. Looking at individual measurements for anything, whatever it is, be it lifting, be it the scale, like those numbers aren't flat and smooth, and you have to look at them over a longer period of time to really understand the trend of what's going on. And it's got to be at least a week or so of data before you can actually see what's going on for a lot of these things. So be patient is one. Trust the fundamentals. Trust the process. And measure. So verify, but measure over a long enough period of time so that you can really understand what's going on, and then you can make adjustments. So that's one. The other is you have so much more potential than you are likely to recognize, and you're almost certainly going to set a goal that that's just too low. And you can do a lot more. Use people who know better to help navigate what's actually hard but achievable, as opposed to swinging too far to the other side. But almost certainly, whatever your instincts are on what your potential is in whatever your time frame is, you're probably wrong, and you're probably wrong by being too low. And you could use the advice and counsel of someone who knows better to set better targets and better goals. Yeah. So I think that's another big personal one. And then the third one, I'll just reiterate it. It's kind of what I said earlier about thoughtfulness. Like, there's so much of what we do that is habituated, that isn't thoughtful, and we can service ourselves the best by using that as a tool for us. And both in the sense of, you want to build the positive habits that you want. That's one way. That's the obvious way. The less obvious way is where you are not thoughtful is exactly the place where you want to make sure you have good habits. So I was talking about those unthoughtful meals. Like, how many lunches have I had where I literally don't even know what I just ate because I'm just throwing the food in my mouth while I'm working? Like, I'm not tasting it. I'm not enjoying it. I want that moment to be the instinctive thing that I do to be a good choice for me. So if it's going to be thoughtless, how do I pattern it? How do I make it easy and convenient to have it be the outcome that I want, or at least not going against whatever my broader intent is. Yeah, that's at least a big tip, I think, that I would have on this.
I love that one. I'm like massaging on a way to like, it's like your results exist in your mindless habits. Like whatever it is that you're not aware of, whatever it is that you want to fix can be found in that like dark corner that like, oh, we don't go there. We don't address it. We don't go in that room.
I'll take it one step further. The the advice that I hear the most is like self-discipline and will for whatever it is. Like you want to achieve something, like self-discipline. You want to lose weight, self-discipline. You want to work out, self-discipline. I think it might be the opposite. I think, or at least for me, self-discipline is nothing more than a tool that makes me feel bad, because every time I don't have discipline, then I just feel bad about myself. And I likely set up whatever it is that I'm requesting myself to have that discipline as something that I'm not going to be able to achieve. And then it's just not a great tool to motivate or get me on the path that I want to be on. Whereas this is sort of the opposite. Like, how do you embrace your thoughtfulness, or thoughtlessness rather? How do you tap into your lack of discipline, your lack of thought, and use that to promote the outcome that you want?
Yeah, you're just automating what you want in a good way. You're just saying like, all right, we want this result, so we're just going to do two things to automate and get the result of eating less versus eating more, or that's what essentially what you did, eating differently. Yeah,
like the thing's literally sitting on my desk. Like I have a banana sitting on my desk right now. Like if I'm just mindlessly going to pick up something because suddenly I have a craving or I'm not even thinking about it, it's a banana that I'm gonna end up picking up because it's what I put sitting there.
Yeah, so that's
very well in a Snickers bar.
It's one of the biggest tips that I've learned in the last year. There's a book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and one of the things he talks about is if there are habits you want to stop, create more steps for you to do them. So if you want to stop watching TV, put your remote controller in a box, take the batteries out, and those 3 steps are a deterrent. If you want to eat more bananas, leave them littered on your desk, and it's like, oh, I'm going to mindlessly grab that, right? And so like whatever it is that you want to start doing, like if you want to start making smoothies, if you want to start meditating, this is a great one. Put your meditation app as one of your top 4 apps right on that bottom screen instead of burying it in your health folder that you haven't touched in 4 months. Right? It's like little simple things. Like you mindlessly click Instagram because it's the first thing on your front page. Put it on your back page. Put it in a little lock folder, and I guarantee you those hours will go down. One other thing you were talking about too, like being patient and not getting like obsessed in the micro, like what's happening each day. I made a little YouTube video on them. Like if you look at Amazon stock over the course of like a week, you're going to lose your mind. But if you zoom out over the course of a year, like you're a pretty happy person as someone from Amazon, right? That resonates because it's like you can't worry about what the scale says on Tuesday and then on Wednesday. Take a step back. What does it say on the last 6 months? And that's a much better thing to focus on.
Absolutely. And it's the mistakes that I did make, because I absolutely went scale crazy. I still actually am overdoing it. I weigh myself once a day as opposed to 3 times a week, which is I think what the good hygiene is. So
3 times a week is just a starting spot.
It's hard.
Most people don't weigh themselves, so 3 times a week is like a good starting spot. I wouldn't say 1 time a week is anything bad. It's just like you've built that habit. You want to be aware, and you know it's now kind of just ingrained in what you do.
1 time.
Yeah, 1 time a day is fine.
But I was at my worst. I was doing it, 4 times a day.
Oh man! now you're just experimenting.
Well, if I don't eat for 4 hours, maybe I'll go down.
You're just running crazy experiments, like not drinking water for 4 days. Cool. A few personality questions, and then we'll let you go. You just finish the hardest workout ever, and you want to go to your favorite restaurant to fuel back up. Favorite restaurant in the world. Where are you going?
I'm going to deep Brooklyn Brooklyn, to get the best pizza in the universe. It's an old pizza joint and now a Hasidic Jewish community of which it's not kosher. So the only people who go there are the people who know to go to this 50-year-old pizza joint. And it's just absolutely amazing. Dafara is the name of the place.
Dafara. How do you spell that?
Difaras. Dafara's.
Difaris or as? As. Cool.
It's been discovered since I started going there. It's since been discovered. So now,
okay.
Now there's buses showing up to see the 80-year-old guy make the pizza.
Oh, that sounds so good though. And I wonder too if places like that, like I don't know what the landscape is in New York with restaurants, but when they all open back up, like if it'll get more people going to it because less pizza shops are open, or less people going to it because less people are going out. But I want to get to New York, and I will put that on the list. So next question, you are finishing like your last set of like bicep curls and you need a pump up song to get you through. What is your go-to pump up song to get you through like the hardest finisher of the
I don't know if I have a one answer to that. Like I think it's at the moment, and right now, what it would be is y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here.
That's a great one. That's all you need. I think that's DMX. That's a very good call. I was worried you were going to say one of your TikTok songs that you always come in and talking about TikTok dances that you're doing. It's quite funny to hear him talk about TikTok. But all right, cool. Last question. Dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I don't know. I'm just going to say the first thing coming into my head. Probably if you ask me again in 5 minutes, I'd change my mind. But it'd be fascinating to talk to Tesla.
Elon Musk?
The real Tesla, the original Tesla.
Oh, the original Tesla. Got it.
The original one.
Yeah, Nikola.
Nikola. Yeah.
Nikola.
Because I'm pretty sure he is crazier than Elon Musk is. Maybe more of a genius as well. But just his absolute insanity, just to feel whatever that energy is that's coming off of the guy, would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, that would be really cool. This is a total tangent, kind of a tangent. Did you ever play Command and Conquer or Command and Conquer Red Alert? It was a computer game. Anyway, cool. No, it would have been right in your wheelhouse. But they had it, like one of the things you could build, right? You could build like tank refineries, you could build oil refineries, you could build this, you could build that. One of the other ones was a Tesla coil, and any like army soldiers that got close to it would just zap them. And that's like what I picture in my head when you say Nikola Tesla is just like a big Christmas tree with a big lightning rod just zapping the waiters and anyone who got too close to you guys. Anyway, tangent. Great game if anyone wants to check that out. But dude, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And hopefully anyone listening to this podcast was able to kind of find some similarities in like the journey they're on and really resonate with the stories you have. This is going to be part 2 of part 4. So we'll have a few more people on this month. And again, thank you for your time, Brian.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, before I let you guys go, just want to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Hopefully you guys got something out of Brian's story where you're like, man, that's me. Like I work at a tech company, or I'm super busy, or I used to run and then I got all banged up and got injured and didn't think that I'd be able to do stuff. Like I share my story all the time. I love being able to share other people's stories so that you can see yourself in their story and then be like, all right, use a little bit of algebra here, where if they were there and now they're here, well, I'm here, and if I solve for X, I can get there too, right? That's what all this is about. So if you enjoyed the podcast, be sure and let me know, let Brian know, reach out to us on social media. I can connect you with Brian through my social media, but also let me know what you think about these podcasts, what you think about these interviews, what you think about this format. Definitely something we could revisit later on in the year. We'll definitely be interviewing other people, different doctors, authors, really cool experts, but I like also showcasing, the full spectrum. And that's what we're doing. If you enjoy the podcast, be sure and leave a 5-star rating and review, subscribe, and help grow the podcast so that we can get get the message out to a bunch of different other people. Other than that, have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you guys on Monday for the Mindful Muscle podcast.